Welcome to LinkedUp, Breaking Boundaries in Education, a podcast that focuses on what is happening in education today, connecting everyone to the movers and shakers that are breaking boundaries in the education arena.
Welcome to LinkedUp, Breaking Boundaries in Education. So, Jerri, we always find the best people at conferences, sometimes at the bar, sometimes not. But this time it wasn't for me. I was at a women's leadership conference. I couldn't get there for the keynote because I had another meeting. But when I got there, the keynote had just ended. And there was this really high energy buzz throughout the entire event. There were over 300 women there. And the buzz was, I'm telling you, it was insane. And I was like, what just happened here? I've been at this conference a couple of years. It's always been amazing, but this was just different. I was like, what just happened here? Something just happened. And they were talking about being more brave. There were sticky notes everywhere. And I was like, this is cool. And I said, well, since I missed it, I got to get you on the podcast. So that's what we did. So you weren't there, Jerri, but it was quite the buzz. So I'm looking forward to hearing about it tonight.
I love a good vibe. That just really makes things happen. So our guest today is Crista Samaras, and she is the lady that created this incredible vibe. Crista, tell us who you are and how you got to that conference and what is your life's work?
Oh, okay. Well, I'll try to keep it short. But my name is Crista, though I went by Christy for the first 24 years of my life till I moved to New York City and was going to be an actress. I changed my name to Crista because I thought it sounded better. But it was when the Twin Towers hit. And so I wasn't an actress anymore. I had to use the skills that I had. Production shut down in New York City. And I started coaching, doing the thing that I knew how to do. I'm from Annapolis, Maryland. So we all played lacrosse there. I have 5 brothers and sisters. We all played in high school and college. So when I didn't have this like career right ahead of me and all the production shut down in New York, I said, you know what, let me coach. And so for the next pretty much 20 years, I coached. And it brought me to 2014, where I built a company of girls who were playing lacrosse from sea to shining sea. But we were focused on girls from non-traditional lacrosse playing areas. So we were using character strengths in order to get girls prepared to play games against teams that were way better than the kids that were on our team. Why? Because they needed to play against kids who were the best in order to get recruited by the best. And so people kept on year after year saying, how are your kids even competing? I'm like, oh, we're using things like making them feel tougher and making their brains think that they can do anything. And that's when I met my now wife, who was an educator, who said, you know, you're talking about grit. And Angela Duckworth does a lot of science on that. And you're talking about growth mindset. And Carol Dweck does a lot of work on that. And you're talking about peak performance and 10,000 hours, and Anders Ericsson does a lot about that. And you're talking about identifying obstacles. And there's a whole lot of goal setting science, but also Gabrielle Ettingen talks about this idea of WOOP. So in 2012, I redid my entire curriculum for that company. We grew to be 1,500 girls playing all over the country. And I started to recognize a problem between their middle school years and their high school years, where they were depleting in something. I couldn't put my finger on it, but what it looked like to me was they were less willing to take action. They were more afraid, it seemed like, and they didn't, along with that fear that was growing, was also this like lack of belief in themselves. So at the time I called it bravery, which is moving in your fear, and confidence, which is like the continue on sustained belief in order to continue to move in or against your fear. And so in 2014, I sold those companies. I on the hunch that I could maybe study bravery and confidence. I did not know some of the things that we would find now 9 years into the company later. So that is kind of how I got to here. I've lived in New York City since 2001. And I guess the fun fact is I came to New York City in 2001 after winning gold medal in England for the Lacrosse World Championship. So
Wow.
Congratulations.
That's amazing. So tell us, so I love this. So I love the whole shift, and you realized that this really was education. I love how you had your own research in working with all of these girls all those years. You realized there was a wall they were hitting.
Yeah.
And so what were some of the things that that helped you identify that?
Yeah.
And then how did it make you shift what your goal and your mission was at that point?
Yeah. Well, once I found a graph that basically studied global self-esteem, and it was men, women from the ages of 9 to 90. And what you saw in this that sort of helped me articulate what I was seeing and aggregating from coaching hundreds, if not thousands of girls, was this dramatic drop in self-esteem between the ages of 9 and 22. The exact ages that I was sort of coaching, and that when our kids were going into college, that we were still sort of mentoring.
Right.
But then I saw a long and slow recovery between the ages of 22 and 65, and then another drop at 65. And I thought, I think this is self-esteem, but that's like not exactly what I'm interested in, because it's not the esteem that they're looking for. It's also just like, that would be a hard thing for me to try to impress. I thought I had a good chance of thinking that I could help write programming, design programming, and experiences where kids, girls, lacrosse players at the time, very acutely, I could help them do stuff they've never thought about doing. I could help urge them, pump them up, like psych them up to like just go a little bit outside of their comfort zone. And, again, in the 9 years that we've done this work, it wasn't just, I sold my lacrosse companies in 2014, and I started Brave 2 years later after testing for 2 years with my lacrosse playing girl. We immediately went to boys, we to understand girls better, and then we started going into adults. We went into schools, kind of operate in 3 different lanes. So K through 12, and that's with teachers as well. Then we go in the lane of sports. We do really well because I'm an athlete, so a lot of my mind frame is, and the stuff I write, it's sort of this underdog mentality. And then there's, of course, the corporate space. So our programming, remains basically the same, which is to have fun with fear, practice outside of your comfort zone, to get reps doing things you've never done before, but all in sort of a scaffolded space that allows you to recognize this isn't real world fear, even if your symptoms feel very real world. So in 9 years, we have found a couple of things I think are important to note. One, bravery and confidence are correlated. So you may not know what you would do with more bravery, but I bet you, Jerri, and I bet you, Jamie, if I asked you, what would you do with more confidence? You probably have thought about it. You probably have real ideas about, maybe what you'd wear, who you call, what you'd ask for, what you say no to. And so what we know is that this bravery training, because of this correlation, we use bravery as a lever to increase confidence. The thing we all know we do something with. The second thing we found out is that there's a fear inflection. So there's a time when kid fears become adult fears. And that happens between the ages of 11 and 13 years old. This is much more commensurate with that drop that we see in bravery and the drop that I saw in self-esteem in that study between 9 and 22 years old. So kids are afraid of bugs. They have the agency to smash them and run away from them. They're afraid of heights. They can come down. They're afraid of the dark. They can turn on the light. You have agency when you have your kid fears. But when you have your adult fears, those adult fears are inside of you. They go everywhere you go. You can't just turn off and on your fear of failure. And that's the third thing that we found. The number one biggest fear is failure for anybody past the inflection point. 80% of people, typically for women, it's higher, and usually 90% of people past the age of 15 who will say that they have an emotional fear. And, anywhere between 20 to 60% might explicitly say failure or something in the neighborhood of failure, like not living up to my own expectation, disappointing myself or others, etc. So those 3 things have allowed us to sort of wedge our way into this field of courage research. It's had us attracted, some researchers out of Motivate Lab in the University of Virginia to start to look at, making this research, turning this research into something that people can really consume for use.
So am I hearing you say, to get more confidence, you have to get over your fear? I'm also hearing like maybe baby steps.
Baby steps, yes. Bravery. So fear is really personal. So bravery is personal. And I would say, I don't know if you get over your fear. What we do is we want you to like face it head on. We have this thing, AEIOU. Acknowledge your fear, right? I have fear. It's like it's fear of this, fear of that. But then you got to like really engage with that fear. That's the E. So if I start to engage with this fear, I understand the feelings. I know when it pops up, then I can identify that fear very acutely. At that point, then I can own it. This is my fear. I am afraid of. This is my biggest fear, which is how we use fear profiling. And then finally, I can use this fear to convert into fuel. And so it does mean baby steps. Listen, I can tell you that if you go on the street right now and you see somebody walking by and you put your hand up to high five them, but you don't know them, that is bravery. Now, whether they high five you or not back doesn't matter, right? You did the thing. You could, fear for you might be raising your hand in class, might be asking questions, might be public speaking. Public speaking is not a fear for me. So when I do it, I'm not getting braver. But if I'm in a 5th grade science class and the teacher asks me a question, all of a sudden I'm going to have these symptoms of fear, right? Because that is outside of my comfort zone. You know what I mean? And I'm going to have to be braving it there. So yes, there's a million ways to practice your bravery, and that helps you mount against your fear. And that over and over and over again creates the flywheel of confidence. It's so cool. It's so cool.
Yes, but I have another question for you.
I love it.
I hear so much about anxiety. How does that come into this? Because our kids have so much anxiety.
Yeah, we say fear is kind of a proxy for anxiety, stress, depression, discomfort.
Okay.
Right? So like if we could bracket them all in, what we want to do is help kids practice. Now the core of our programming is based on cognitive behavioral therapy. So it's to be doing the thing that you're most scared to do or stressed to do or anxious to do. There's a limitation, right? If you struggle really with sort of pathological anxiety, then I wouldn't necessarily prescribe our programming.
Right.
Because what we do is we kind of cause a stir. We create a scenario that provokes a certain feeling of fear so that you have a place to practice. And the reason why we care about what people are scared of is because we can't, if you guys are scared of dogs, but we give you a session where we're practicing being afraid of practicing your failure, it's not going to resonate. But if you're scared of failure and the session you go into practices failure, you're coming out feeling like, you're sweating. You're like doing all the things of like getting in that fear and practicing your bravery. But again, we think more about distress management, especially when we're in K through 12, especially when we're looking at kids who are struggling with anxiety or struggling with stress or struggling with fear, uncertainty. They sometimes lack social connection skills, which, the pandemic sort of dropped out from all of us. So we barrel that into our programming and make it a session, which we call fun with fear. So they're in there doing, flexing their, how do they respond to a certain prompt? They get kind of comfortable. We change the prompt. They're uncomfortable again. They get kind of comfortable. We change the prompt again. So this is the kind of stuff we want to build the elasticity to be able to just surf the edge of your comfort zone. Like you said, it can be very, very small, and it's very personal to each individual.
So you've got those baby steps, you've got the scaffolding built in, but you started your audience started with girls, female lacrosse players.
Yeah.
Who were preteen, teen. And now, who is your audience? It sounds so broad because this is not just for children. So what are you finding that people are wanting you to do your work for?
Yeah, I think it's those 3 lanes I mentioned, K through 12. So schools really want to get into classrooms and embolden teachers to be able to, it's a little bit of classroom management, some of the exercises we do. We run a series of 9 different exercises that we created, and they compound and really help kids feel like they've got some skills underneath of them. I want this to feel very practical and usable. So K through 12 sort of feels very classroomy, like classic education, but it's very human in that we're teaching people to be able to communicate with themselves, with each other. We get
for teachers or for students or both.
So we go in for students, but we're working with the Savannah Chatham Public School district, and we are training all their first-year teachers, second-year teachers, third-year teachers. And by the time we're getting to the second-year teachers, we're actually going into the classrooms with them, or plan to go into the classrooms with them, so that you can be a math teacher and say, okay, how do I embed this into my math class, on the daily? If you're a theater teacher, how do we get this in, with a smaller group of kids? If you're a SPED teacher, how are you working this or principles of this one-on-one? So I think it's really great to be able to, we went to, after NJASA, when I saw you, Jamie, and met you, we went to Avenel Middle School and did a girls group. And we're only 20 kids in the group, but then they got the message out, and it was 40 kids in the room. And so we just lit it up in the dance room. It was so fun. And we did a report there. So that's incredible, but also now trying to give them follow-up programming that allows them to continue. So K through 12 is great. We of course do colleges as well. We do athletic departments, go in and work with all the women on the athletic department. And then we're going to the corporate space now, I think, with just everything that's going on right now, there's like a huge spread of uncertainty. And if you want to practice in that uncertainty and you want to have some fun in there, like we're your people, we absolutely want to, sort of like we say, help you kind of build your boom.
Build your
I
boom.
like fun with fear because fear to me always sounds paralyzing.
Yeah.
Fun with fear sounds active.
Yeah.
Like I'm going to get active with this and do something about it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Break out of it and break out of it. Yeah, that's great.
Yes.
It's almost like you're creating ambassadors when you're going into the schools. So I think that's so wonderful because you're teachers as ambassadors, right, in their own classroom.
Yeah.
But then also when you're working with students, you're training them, but then they're also bringing it forward. So
I mean, everywhere we go, I'd say, Jamie, we pick up one or two activators. So we always ask the question in our surveys. We're a data company, so it's not just we go in there and we activate people, but we take pre-surveys and post-surveys and have impact measure data. So we have done like incredible work and have incredible findings, but we also have an activator fleet of like 10 to 20 people who are specialized in, say, middle school boys, specialized in college female athletes. We work with Bishop McNamara High School, so we do their sophomore retreat every year. We've been doing it since 2018. So 120 boys on a Tuesday, 120 sophomore girls on a Wednesday, and we're there with them for 6 hours. We bring our whole activator fleet in. So, I mean, there's a lot that we like to embed in it, but we like to also measure, is this working? Is this actually helping kids? And can we use the data that we collect, not only just to show impact, but we can help influence programming that you can identify as being necessary, wanted, or needed by the students themselves. We've been asking leadership questions, and it turns out 50% of kids in high school right now are saying that they're not certain yet about what kind of leader they are. Well, that to me shows a big, massive need to start saying, listen, this world needs leaders now, yesterday. And so we can start embedding in some programming there. And then we're not proprietary with any of our stuff. It's like, you see it and it works for your group, and use it right away. So I learned that very early on. So we like people to be able to use this stuff instantly. That means teachers, kids, athletes, etc.
That's amazing. It really is. Tell us a little bit more about the data you collect, how you collect it. I saw a little bit of that in action, and what you hope to see, and then how you share that data, what you do with that data.
Yeah, we take a pre-survey, very standard, and we take a post-survey. And our psychometrics are sort of like, generally overviewed by our friends, scientists at Motivate Lab, which has been great. They helped us establish our logic model way early on, 2019. But we ask, how do you feel on a scale of 1 to 10? How brave do you feel? How confident do you feel? What are the fears that you're feeling? Did you take action? Did you take any brave action in the last month before the session? Did you witness any brave action in the last month? So we're basically getting at understanding sort of the principles of what we found are the 3 ways to get more brave. So one of them is honesty with yourself. Our hypothesis is that if you know the big answers to big questions for yourself, that increases your sense of self-efficacy, your sense of self-knowledge, and that sort of emboldens you to like take a big step, tell your story, etc. That's the foundation. Second thing to get more brave is taking brave action. So are you willing to, in your fear, take those little small steps? So all of our programming, relies on the practice of this, but our questions rely on asking how much they took in the last month. Then finally, witnessing brave action. So courage is contagious. I'm sure you guys have heard that adage before, but it is actually true. When I see you do something that I am scared to do, I get braver. But when I see you do something, Jamie, that I know you're scared to do, I also get braver, even if I'm not scared to do that same thing. So our data allows us to see how brave do people feel after the session as compared to before, how confident they feel after as compared to before. What does that jump look like? We've had jumps of 75% in one class. We've had, it's very standard to get 20% increase in feelings of bravery and confidence, which is amazing. But we also ask, do you feel more brave? You know what I mean? Just standard, not whether or not their scores are higher or lower, but do you feel more brave, yes or no? And we like those scores to be above 65%, but oftentimes we're getting 95%. 95% of people in the room say they feel more brave than they did 2 hours before, or more confident than they did 2 hours before, which is insane. But even better, we asked in this post survey, did you take brave action in the session? Now we've already asked them, did you take brave action in the month before? And oftentimes it's 50% of people took brave action the month before. And in the session, 96% of people felt they had the opportunity to do something brave. And that to me is the efficacy that we need. to see. And then finally, witnessing brave action. You know, we go for 100%. Like, you should see bravery in a room. Whether you decide to take brave action or not, if we get you warmed up to it, great. If you actually do it, great. But you have to see it. So we're oftentimes hitting 100 on whether people have witnessed brave action in a session. And this is why it makes it so fun. If you come at people with the words risk and fear and failure, and you make them do stuff, it is, Jerri, like you said, paralyzing. Feels just like you're just stuck. And we want them to just sort of like find some movement in it. And, you know, when the shoelace is really tight, you know what I mean? You just sort of edge it and then it gets loose. It's like that. Like, that's what we want our class to be.
Well, what would be an example of something I could do in a session that I would show bravery around?
So we do something called a pitch exchange. So we can actually practice that right now. If you guys are willing, do you have a pen and a piece of paper? We can help you come up with your pitches right now. It'll be real quick.
Okay.
So what we do at Brave is we build this, what we call a 7-line Brave pitch. This is your story. It's your past, it's your present, it's your future. First 3 lines of your past. So the first line is just your whole name. So you would go by 3 names, you go by 1 name, you go by 2 names. I'm Crista Samaras. So you write your first name, last name down, and put a period at the end of it. That's a story. In your own heads, think of what your name means to you. Is your last name the one you grew up? Did you acquire your last name? Who calls you by your first name? Is it a nickname? Or is it your given name, etc.? Right? So your first name, last name is your first line. That is a story. Second line, think of a year in your life where you were that's the most significant to you. A year where you've maybe found strength, found bravery even. This is where we're pulling from your past. This is your self-efficacy. Okay, so think of a year. Mine's 1999. I can tell you all the reasons why, but that's not the point. The point is that it means something to me. 1999. I'm telling you, I graduated from college that year. But I'm also saying 2 years before I graduated from college, I failed out. And I would go back later. I tell you that I tore my ACL in 1998 to return to my senior season only 3 months later and play the whole thing and get Ivy League Player of the Year just in 1999. Right? So 1999 means something to me. So pick a year that's significant to you, that's meaty, that feels like you're saying something, even if you're saying nothing but me. Right? So I got Crista Samaras, I got 1999. Jerri, give me your first 2 lines.
Jerri Kimball, 2010.
I love it. And Jamie?
Jamie Saponaro, 1994.
Perfect. I love it. Third line, last part of your past. It's a place where you draw strength or bravery, or that's the most significant place to you. Somewhere you have actually been. Right? Think about your room growing up. Think about a city maybe you visited and fell in love in. Think about where you work, or you have worked or dedicated your time and space every day. So mine is New York City, even though I'm moving. I think it will be for a very long time. New York City. Where I saw 2 towers fall, where there was a blackout, where I had both of my babies, right? New York City. So we got our first 3 lines. Now, let's just stop here for a second. Here's an exercise. Jerri, you and I are going to do it. It's called a pitch exchange.
All right.
We, on sort of virtual, it won't be, we'll be able to show a couple layers. But I'm going to tell you my 3 lines. You're going to tell me your 3 lines, okay?
Okay.
Crista Samaras, 1999, New York City.
All right. Jerri Kimball, 2010, LFK.
Amazing. So in a group, we will have kids, we have adults, we have people. They're just what they're doing. They're exchanging their pictures. They're meeting each other, telling them their stories. Then we blow the whistle because we run everything on the whistle because it's so fun. It's like practice. Then it's like, all right, Jerri. Now, when you go up to somebody, we're gonna say our lines at the same time. All right.
Okay.
Well, it's harder here virtually, but we'll try it. So at the same time, say your 3 lines. I'll say mine. Ready? Here we go.
Jerri Kimball,
1999, New York City. There we go. Okay. And you're getting excited. You're like, am I listening? Am I saying? Can I remember? Right. And now the exchanges are happening faster. Maybe you're going back to the same people. You're starting to have a little fun. And I don't know about you, but I'm sweating out of my armpits right now, which is why I wore a tank top. I thought we might do. All right. So then the next level is, and here's where we start to get into it. It's like, already I'm scared of meeting new people. Already I'm scared that I'm going to forget my lines. Already I'm scared that I'm going to have to bring in the energy. Now I'm going to ask them, could you, when you do your lines at the same time, could you spark joy in the other person that helps them forget their lines or helps them smile? Right? So now it would be like, we're going to kind of jump into it with joy. Same thing at the same time, but you're trying to spark joy in me. At the same time, I want to open myself to make sure I can accept joy. And I'm doing the same to you in return. Okay? So ready? Here we go. Ready? Princess Warren, 1999. You carry. Okay. All right. So that we didn't build the rest of our pitch yet, but that is an exercise that has the room spinning. And that's like in the first 10 minutes.
Oh,
right?
yeah. All over the room that's going on.
Yeah. And with kids, it helps them get this eye-to-eye contact skill back, but adults too. It helps you afterwards, people are like, should I? Yes, you go ahead and high five, like acknowledge the person, move on to the next one. You're also getting in touch with your story. So it's starting to anchor us into what will become the remaining 4 lines of that 7-line pitch. Kind of awesome.
Well, what are the last 4 lines? I'm dying to know.
Sure. Okay. Well, the lines 4, 5, and 6 are based in your present. The women you guys are sitting in your seats right now. You want to think of 3 lines that sort of describe everything about you, right? All of the complications, all of the multifacets, and we call these I am statements. Now, they're not supposed to be like affirmations in the sense of affirmation words like I am beautiful, I am amazing, I am strong. These are supposed to be rooted in honesty, right? I could have something like I rise early because I do. I get up at 4. I could have things like I am sad because I struggle with depression. And things like, I work hard because I do. Mine are I am bold. I am curious. I surprised. Right? And with that, I've told you everything about almost miscarrying my baby. Everything about living in New York City, having a lisp my entire life, being one of 6 Greek, kids to an immigrant. I told you so many things about my struggle with depression. So you think of 3 words, 3 statements that really help describe who you are right now, rooted in your past a little bit, but basically who you are. You don't want to be faking with these words. Finally, your 7th line is what we call your B word. I've had 2 companies. My first company was called Bounce Entertainment with the lacrosse ball. That acronym is BE. This company is called Brave Enterprises. The B word has been with me for over 15 years. The B word is something you need to be if you take inventory of all that you already are. It's not like an aspirational. It's not like an ideal word. It's something that you are, that you need to be in order to very acutely support the chase you are on right now. If my goal is to run a 6-minute mile, I need to be what? Focused. Right? If my goal is to write a book, I need to maybe be consistent. If my goal is to change my website, my goal is maybe to be up or be creative, right? So we want people to take a lot of poetic license. Now, here's the thing. These stories, when told all together at the end, we can help you create the story in 3 minutes. I've taken maybe 6 minutes here. Right. But kindergartners create this story. Like adults at tech firms to create this story. And it is like when they share them, I mean, I buckle, my knees buckle when you hear a kid say, I am a hug. What? I am a hug? And their parents are like, that's exactly what he is, or I am humility, or I am sunshine, or I am human, or I am enough. Like we've heard thousands of these and it blows your mind. So, obviously, we're going for a visceral experience because we're talking about fear. We ask kids, what are the symptoms of fear? You go to the doctor and you say, I have a sore throat. I have a fever. What do I have? Maybe you have the flu. Well, I have sweaty palms and my heart is racing and I'm being very quiet and maybe even mean to my family and friends. Doctor could say, you're in fear. Okay. So what kind of bravery are we going to do to manage some of this stuff? And that's what we want kids, that we want people to be able to develop a system to manage the fears that they have. Because I don't know about you guys as women, they told me as Gen X, stuff that fear into your pinky toe and let's just call it, you won't have any fear. But I feel scared. No, that's not real. And I'll say one more thing on my little podium I have here is the fearless girl who stands across from the charging bull. Yes, I love that. I love her. I love everything that she stands for. I just don't love that she's called fearless because she's not standing there without fear. She's standing there across from the charging bull is how they originally designed her with so much fear, but standing in her bravery. And I think when we say be fearless, we actually mean be brave. And so that's kind of like the very nature of we don't want people to be without fear. That's not the objective. That's a waste of time. Own the fear you have because it's energy
that helps them get
be converted.
Right.
Yeah, totally.
Right. Actually using it as a tool almost.
Totally.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, this
Yeah.
is fabulous.
I know. I knew
Right?
you'd love her, Jerri. I knew
I
it.
do. I one more question I have to know.
Yeah.
What were all the sticky notes about?
Yes,
Yeah.
so that's part of our data. So
Yeah.
we have 4 sticky notes. We usually use 3 in a session. So one of them is your biggest fear. What is your biggest fear? If I ask you the scaredest you've ever been, you think back on your life of things that have been hard. I ask you, what are you scared of right now? And I ask you to pick your one biggest fear. That is how we establish a fear profile and start understand, that fear inflection point. With the biggest fear, we oftentimes combine that with then, okay, great. Think of your biggest fear and think of one way you could be brave in the face of that fear. We did not do that with NJSA, but that Post-it note lives in our book, our journal, our confidence journal, which is 181 questions over 118 pages. And we want people to come up with what is one way they can be brave. Always be thinking about the way to convert, what it is you're scared of to bravery. Right. We have another one called a hard truth. So this goes back to that, be honest with yourself as a way to be brave. What is the hardest thing to be true about yourself? Mine is that I'm aggressive. People, when they love me because I'm aggressive. When they hate me because I'm aggressive, right? Being aggressive has made me great at sports, great at developing business, great at finding partnerships and leveraging lots of things, but it's not made me great in relationships. And when I was in college, I didn't know that this was my hard truth. So I was out there trying not to be the bad parts of that, but not understanding how do I mix that in. So we help teach kids and people how to recognize this in themselves and leverage it to benefit everybody. And then finally, we have our B word. So we have a B word Post-it. So your 7th line is your B word. And we looked very early on to see whether there's a difference between what girls were choosing as their B word and what boys were choosing as their B word. And very early on, it looked like boys were choosing more active words. But now, post-pandemic, I can say that since 2021, people are very different. Our data has taken lots of left turns, not the correlation part, not the fear inflection point, but the difference between boys and girls and bravery, women and men and bravery. And we have a growing category of, non-binary individuals who don't identify as either female or male. And so we're just starting to understand just all people more.
Sure.
Yeah.
Wow. This is amazing.
Fun. It's really fun.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and you bring joy to people. You're helping them use fear as a tool to set goals for themselves, and you're bringing joy along the way. So I think it's so wonderful. Must be very fulfilling to go across the country and do this.
It is very fulfilling. It's also great to be with kids one day and, tech people and the next. It's really awesome.
Right.
We're lucky. Yeah.
So how do people find out about you?
You go to our website, morebrave.com. We have a bunch of information on there. You can find us on, LinkedIn at Brave Enterprises. You can find us on TikTok or on Instagram at Get More Brave. That's sort of our tagline is Get More Brave. And then, of course, I'm everywhere at Crista Samaras.
Okay. All right. We'll have all of that in our show notes.
Amazing.
This has been terrific. Now, Amy knows I have a fear of escalators.
She does.
So I'm going to use this to conquer that.
You should, start walking up, use the down escalator as a treadmill. Practice. So you're walking up the down escalator. You'll find your footing. Though, try it.
The down escalator. Oh,
yeah. It's not with all of your luggage. We'll do it without your luggage. It usually has at least 4 to 5 pieces of luggage in tow, but we'll do the elevator with the luggage. Otherwise,
okay.
Yeah.
I would tell you though, Jerri, what is being afraid of escalator? What goals is that getting in the way of you achieving?
That's true.
Right. Because sometimes I can't get to where I want to be.
Yeah. But I would challenge you. I would say that bet you're scared of something deeper in here that you wouldn't find if you didn't go to an airport. You know what I mean? Or what is the emotional escalator that you're afraid of?
Yeah. Go deeper. Go deeper.
I'm just saying I'm here to challenge, to poke.
I'm gonna think about that all afternoon.
Yeah.
The emotional escalator.
Yeah.
Oh,
there you go.
Yeah.
Pushing our thinking. There she goes. Very good, Crista.
I love this. I could listen to you all afternoon.
I mean, anytime. As everybody who knows me knows, if you call me up and you say, hey, let's chat a little bit, I'm like, how long you got? Because I love it.
I love that.
Energy is that energy. I love it so much. Well, good luck with your move. I know, it is very exciting. We're happy to share all that you do, and we'll make sure that all of your details are in the show notes so that you can help children in schools across the country be more brave.
Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for this good work.
Woohoo!
Thank you for listening. And if you would like to stay linked up, be sure to follow us on Apple and Spotify, and subscribe to us on YouTube.